Chapter 49. I lived at the Tel de la Fleur, and Mrs. Johnson, the proprietress, had a sad story to tell of lost opportunity. After Strickland's death, certain of his effects were sold by auction in the marketplace at Papeete, and she went to it herself, because there was among the truck an American stove she wanted. She paid 27 francs for it. There were a dozen pictures, she told me, but they were unframed and nobody wanted them. Some of them sold for as much as 10 francs, but mostly they went for 5 or 6. Just think, if I had bought them, I should be a rich woman now. But Tyre Johnson would never under any circumstances have been rich. She could not keep money. The daughter of a native and an English sea captain settled in Tahiti. When I knew her, she was a woman of 50, who looked older and of enormous proportions. Tall and extremely stout, she would have been of imposing presence if the great good nature of her face had not made it impossible for her to express anything but kindliness. Her arms were like legs of mutton, her breasts like giant cabbages, her face, broad and fleshy, gave you an impression of almost indecent nakedness, and vast chin succeeded to vast chin. I do not know how many of them there were. They fell away voluminously into the capaciousness of her bosom. She was dressed usually in a pink Mother Hubbard, and she wore all day long a large straw hat. But when she let down her hair, which she did now and then, for she was vain of it, you saw that it was long and dark and curly, and her eyes had remained young and vivacious. Her laughter was the most catching I ever heard. It would begin, a low peal in her throat, and would grow louder and louder till her whole vast body shook. She loved 3 things: a joke, a glass of wine, and a handsome man. To have known her is a privilege. She was the best cook on the island, and she adored good food. From morning till night you saw her sitting on a low chair in the kitchen, surrounded by a Chinese cook and 2 or 3 native girls, giving her orders, chatting sociably with all and sundry, and tasting the savory messes she devised. When she wished to do honor to a friend, she cooked the dinner with her own hands. Hospitality was a passion with her, and there was no one on the island who need go without a dinner when there was anything to eat at the Tel de la Fleur. She never turned her customers out of her house because they did not pay their bills. She always hoped they would pay when they could. There was one man there who had fallen on adversity, and to him she had given board and lodging for several months. When the Chinese laundryman refused to wash for him without payment, she had sent his things to be washed with hers. She could not allow the poor fellow to go about in a dirty shirt, she said, and since he was a man and men must smoke, she gave him 1 franc a day for cigarettes. She used him with the same affability as those of her clients who paid their bills once a week. Age and obesity had made her inapt for love, but she took a keen interest in the amatory affairs of the young. She looked upon venery as the natural occupation for men and women, and was ever ready with precept and example from her own wide experience. I was not 15 when my father found that I had a lover, she said. He was 3rd mate on the Tropic Bird. A good-looking boy. She sighed a little. They say a woman always remembers her first lover with affection, but perhaps she does not always remember him. My father was a sensible man. What did he do? I asked. He thrashed me within an inch of my life, and then he made me marry Captain Johnson. I did not mind. He was older, of course, but he was good-looking too. Tyre, her father, had called her by the name of the white, scented flower which, they tell you, if you have once smelt, will always draw you back to Tahiti in the end. However far you may have roamed, Tyre remembered Strickland very well. He used to come here sometimes, and I used to see him walking about Papeete. I was sorry for him. He was so thin, and he never had any money. When I heard he was in town, I used to send a boy to find him and make him come to dinner with me. I got him a job once or twice, but he couldn't stick to anything. After a little while he wanted to get back to the bush, and one morning he would be gone. Strickland reached Tahiti about 6 months after he left Marseilles. He worked his passage on a sailing vessel that was making the trip from Auckland to San Francisco, and he arrived with a box of paints, an easel, and a dozen canvases. He had a few pounds in his pocket, for he had found work in Sydney, and he took a small room in a native house outside the town. I think the moment he reached Tahiti, he felt himself at home. Tyre told me that he said to her once, "I'd been scrubbing the deck, and all at once a chap said to me, Why, there it is. And I looked up, and I saw the outline of the island. I knew right away that there was the place I'd been looking for all my life. Then we came near, and I seemed to recognize it. Sometimes when I walk about it all seems familiar. I could swear I've lived here before. Sometimes it takes them like that, said Tyre. I've known men come on shore for a few hours while their ship was taking in cargo, and never go back. And I've known men who came here to be in an office for a year, and they cursed the place, and when they went away they took their dying oath they'd hang themselves before they came back again, and in 6 months you'd see them land once more, and they'd tell you they couldn't live anywhere else.